Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. And it's time to go into Jubilee 42's boss battles. Now, with the insane level of power creep that the Ogre's Pride meta has brought, if you have, the full team and all the buffs active, it does the most damage we have ever seen thus far. And it leaves almost every other team way, way behind in the race. So we're gonna just put that out there, that if you don't have the meta, your score is going to look nowhere near close to this. And this is low for, I'm technically rank 5, yes, but I mean, if we look at the rankings of this fight, of Boss Battle 1 even, I'm at 1.13, but you can go to like 1.5 or higher. Look at Nature, 1.5. He has a full 120 team. I do not. And I'm not going to get much higher than this, quite honestly. So, if you have the team, then great. And if you don't, your score is going to be really, really lower. And it's just kind of unfortunate that you're pretty much locked on both of these fights. But we got to do the video. I got to show you guys something that can at least get you a score. So that's what we're going to do. Boss Battle 1 is today's focus. It is the AoE stage, which is why the score is so much higher, because you're nuking against 3 people. You've got Kurobe, Geld, and Rigurd. They don't really do anything super crazy. Kurobe nerfs greens, so you can't do that. Geld gives them physical resistance and guard rate, which means that physical characters are going to do a lot less. Rieger is the only one with a very annoying thing, and it's that he deletes some of your ult gauge, 20%. And that happens on turn 4. So if whatever characters are up front, they will just lose 20% ult gauge. So if you have a barely over an ult, you're going to lose the ult, and you're going to go back to nothing. So just keep that in mind. He also does lower your attack and lowers crit damage, which I guess is fine. The team isn't crit focused, but this is just kind of annoying. The set starting hand is a special convert, so if you have Hakuro, you need a skill point unit up front, like Space Millum or Water Soe or Wind Lumi, to use this convert, or you bring Soe, the new Soe, and you can convert this, and then you're off to the races. But let's just go ahead and start this up. Before we start everything, we're going to put this in the edit, but I do use the Konosuba team for a run just to see how it goes with Violet and Blanc. Not a lot of people have access to this team, which is why I didn't want to include it. It does okay damage, because you do have Konosuba Rimuru with the extra damage versus Earth. Megumin is Fire. Everyone is single target, though. Kazuma, Aqua, and Megumin are all single targets. But we are able to rush the ult with Aqua, and if we skip ahead to our actual damage turn, we can see what our nuke looks like. So this 200% orb, we have to send Megumin first, because on the ult she stuns herself. So Kazuma does 690k, and then Aqua 2.3 million, and then Megumin does 3.6 million. And Kazuma did so much less is because he didn't have the weakness strike or the magic buff. So he was severely gimped, but the other two did. 7 million is close to what the Commander team clip that I'm going to show later in the video. So it's certainly not bad. It's just that it's a collab team, and if you don't have it, it's not even on the table for you. So I'm not going to dedicate an entire full run to this, but it is an option if you have it. All right, Team 1 is the sweaty tryhard meta, Benimaru. We got Dark Soe, who will take care of our orb change turn 1. Violet for the magic buff that we are going to hold on Momiji and Soe. Elmezia, Momiji, and then Shuna. So Shuna, because she has her own magic buff, she's good. But Momiji and Soe do not have a magic buff, which is why we're bringing Violet. Not only because of that, but because of her orb change. So we have Soe and Violet to orb change. Shuna now has the alt swap, and we're going to look pretty good. And the team is pretty easy to run. We've got Summer Shizu underneath Momiji because of her Pierce Power trait, and that's the only reason. Otherwise, I would just run Megumin. or something like that. This is like extra sweaty, and we've got Pierce Power trait from Shuna as well. That will only really apply to this Shuna, because she's going to be the one that's staying on the front line, because we have too many buffs on this team to use everything on the final turn. So we need to buff both Soei and Momiji on at least turn 7, and then send them away, which will just leave Shuna up front. But we're going to go through this at hyperspeed, because stacking teams take forever, and we hopefully know what to do here. Okay, so turn 1, Soei orb change. Turn 2 is where a lot of the RNG kicks in, because if you can't orb change with Violet, it's a dead run. And you'll have enough points to do that and use Elmesia's alt rush ability. And I'm fairly certain that the reason they put that 20% alt gauge reduction on Rigurd is to counteract Elmesia and her charm effect, her enamor effect, which gives you 15% alt gauge. But because there are multiple enemies, you can actually use the charm on 2 enemies sometimes if you have the points for it. So there, we got a good double orange hand. So we used the enamor effect from Elmesia, and then we brought Violet in, and then we'll bring Soei. We are running the alt gauge on blue charm, because it's very difficult to get triple EX alts with this team unless you get really, really godly RNG. So we're sacrificing some skill points or some extra protection gauge in favor of not quite guaranteeing, but making it very easy to get 3 EX alts. This turn, we were very lucky. We just had to use a Soei convert. We'll bring Elmesia in, and we'll charm now Geld, so we have 2 different units that are getting the enamor effect on, charm effect is what we call it. And that's an extra 30% alt gauge at the end of the turn right here, which will definitely help out our characters that want the alt, especially Shuna, since she hasn't really been up front, because we're prioritizing the AoE units, because they need their alts first. That way we can send them away with the Violet buff. That's more important than anything else. So here, another lucky hand for Soei's orb change, another stack of Benimaru, and we'll leave it as is. I do want to leave it though, because I don't leave it, because we want to put the charm effect on again. And I think this will help us get the ults. And then, yeah, next turn, we'll bring Violet. So this will actually get us the 2 EX ults that we want from Momiji and Soei, which means next turn, very early, we can send them away, which in some cases is good and some cases is not good. So you see we lost our EX ult, but then the charm kicked in, or the enamor effect kicked in, and we got it back. So here, I mean, very lucky. So magic buff for the 2 AoE characters, and then we will take out Momiji. We'll use the Soei convert and then the alt swap here, therefore giving us a full hand of blue, and then we can bring Elmesia in for Soei, and then use our 2 stacks. So now Momiji and Soei are ready to go. They're going to be fully buffed when turn 8 comes around. Now we just have to worry about getting the ult for Shuna, the EX ult for Shuna. And we do have Elmesia up front, which means we can charm again, but we didn't have enough points to do that last time. And there's the attack nerf, there's that, okay. This is unlucky though. We were not able to convert this hand because we got 1 extra orange instead of a green. It would have been really good if we had had a Violet hand. So I sit here thinking for a bit, and what I end up doing is I just send the oranges. So we did have a dead turn here, which keeps me from getting my, pinnacle of high score that I could get. I'm not really worried about it. I lost 10% alt damage, I guess, at the end of the day. Not a super big deal, but it is unfortunate. So send this. We're going to use any skills except the enamor effect, because I still want some kind of alt gauge. Unfortunate that none of them are Shuna orbs, because I really would have liked a few Shuna oranges. But then we get this. So we made up for it. We got all 3 alts. We got a natural hand of blues, so we only have to alt swap here. And this should get us the EX ult because of the enamor effect that's already on Kurobe. And even without it, we would get it. So now we're ready to go. We're at 400 points. Soei and Momiji are in the back with a magic buff already. And now we're ready to go. And we can see that the incoming orb is a Shuna orb, which is even better. So Elmesia buff, boom. And then we'll bring Momiji or Soei in, it doesn't really matter who. They look at half health because she still has the Elmesia HP buff skill on. Don't worry about it. We didn't actually take that much damage. And now we can swap Soei in for Elmesia because we've already used her skill. Violet's skill also was already used. And now Shuna buff, Momiji buffs, and then we apply the Soei buff because we have to do those first, and we get the extra 100% or extra 50% synergy power on it. Plus the Pierce power from this. And boom. 0 points. We are ready to go. And we'll go ahead and send it. And we have a full hand of Shunas. It would have been better with Momiji, but oh well. Soei does 6.6 million damage right there. Sorry. Let me slow it down for you. Yeah, 6.5 million each. And then Momiji does 23 million. Somewhere around there. Yeah, I know it's not hard. It's very hard to see. And then Shuna does 18.3 million, which, and then her follow-up orbs, 496k, and then 1 million, 200% orb. So that is my highest score right there. Again, there's not really much ways for me to improve it except for dupes and to not have that one dead turn of oranges. But that is the full sweaty meta, and that's what they're using, for all the other sweats. Let's move on to the much less fortunate teams now. Alright, next up is a half quote-unquote meta for Ogre's Pride. We've still got Benimaru, we've still got Momiji, but we're not including Shuna, we're not including Elmesia, like these other whale characters. So we're going to bring a bunch of older characters. Free-to-play Hakuro converts, alt rushes. Free-to-play Rieger has the double alt convert and orange converting. Light Milim has her own blue orb conversion and a 45% attack buff. Momiji obviously is still the AoE nuker. And then Water Shuna has the alt buff while being also Ogre's Pride. So we have at least 3 Ogre's Pride characters, which means that we can get the most out of Hakuro's orb change. We have Milim and we have Rieger converting as well. And so we have 1, 2, 3 primary damage units. We're going to try and get an alt for Hakuro or Rieger, either way. He's wind, but not type advantage, but he is on Ogre's Pride. Rieger is fire and magic, so he has type advantage, but not on Ogre's Pride. It's really interchangeable who you want to get the alt with. It's just that you want the alts with these 2 characters primarily. So the only thing that's difficult for this team is turn 2, essentially. Because we're going to send these 4 blues, which leaves us very much open to getting a very, very crappy hand turn 2, unless the game really, really likes you, which it did not for me. So I decided just to run it. So with these 4 blues and the big 3 and some extra protection traits, you can get a stack of Benimaru here. That's fine. But here, we're just going to send these 3 oranges because I don't feel like wasting any more time here. And now we can actually get up and running. We have 68 points, enough for Hakuro. So we'll bring him in. The front line is all Ogre's Pride, so we can use the orb change. We can also use the alt rush, which also buffs the damage our blue orbs do by 10% each time. So you're not going to get too many uses out of that, but it's certainly something. And then we get lucky here. So we already have the alt from Momiji because we had to send those oranges, which I guess is cool. And we do have Rieger for alt swapping and orange orb changing. So we'll just use both of his skills. Boom. We'll send him because he's still fire and magic, so he'll contribute a little bit. They are guarding. We don't have to worry about the alt rush too much here, or the alt gauge denial, right? Like that just happened because we have Hakuro, and he's just gonna give it back to us. So alt swap the Rieger, in comes Hakuro, orb change, alt rush again. Now we're going to get the Momiji EX alt, and we still have 4 more turns to go. Double stack of Benimaru. No Hakuro orbs is unfortunate, but we are slowly but surely rushing his alt with his own skill. And otherwise it's pretty much the same. This attack nerf is also quite unfortunate, because we're going to keep sending Hakuro away, and we're also going to get his alt. But he's always going to have that attack nerf on if he just stays in the back, because we can never just leave him up for a turn and get rid of it, because we need to bring Rieger in to alt swap away. So here, there's a quote-unquote EX alt for Water Shuna, but she doesn't have the ability to do that. And the second to last turn, looks like this. Okay, well, let's stack with Benimaru, let's alt swap again, and then we'll bring Hakuro in, and then when we rush his alt this turn, we'll actually get his alt and convert. And we have plenty of points because we don't have a lot of big-time buffers on this team. So he has his ult, which is great, but he has that attack nerf. So maybe there's a turn that I could have brought in like Milim or something instead, but oh well. So Milim will be giving the attack buff to both Shuna and Momiji, and then she'll go away, and in comes Hakuro for his single target, slightly nerfed ult. So here, boom, attack buff, and then Hakuro comes in. We could have used her orb change, it would have been cheaper, but we still have enough points to use Hakuro's anyway, so it's not like a really big deal. It's just unfortunate that we have no Momiji orbs for her follow-up, like 200% or something like that. So if you wanted to use this team and you wanted a better run, you would just be looking for extra Momiji orbs on this final nuke. But Momiji only does, what, like 2 million or something right there? 495k, Hakuro 228k. So just under 8 million. Yeah, it's a far cry from the 111 that we did in the last run. But it just goes to show what happens when you have a fully wanked out team, or you don't, and you have to use a bunch of older characters because you maybe only got lucky on the first banner with the free tickets, and maybe you're Koban, and you managed to pull Momiji and Benimaru. But then that's the only options you really have. So there is a team that can get a score. It's not a great score. It is still an S rank though, so that's something. But let's move on to a better scoring alternate team. Alright, the Commander meta does have an AoE fire character in Shizu. So let's use her. We're bringing Renard, Glenda, Hinata, Primal Demon Diablo, which I know is a very interesting pick, but I'll explain it. Shizu is our primary nuker, and then Christmas Shizu, while not on the Commander meta herself, is still fire, and will be giving the AoE debuff and Pierce power buff, and the fire attack and fire resistance down to both her and this Shizu. Well, just the Shizu, realistically. So Diablo is here for RNG, because as we know from the actual Commander team, Hinata sometimes is not enough. Sometimes you get too many greens, and this team, if you get more than 2 greens, it's over. So we could bring like Octagram Lumi or something like that instead and put her there, and that would help buff these two Shizus even more. But the RNG is much higher. So we brought Diablo purely because he has that full hand of green orbs, and Shizu has the full hand of oranges. So after like turn 3, we're set, essentially. The Hinata orb change is a special convert, also has that triple hit, which I guess is cool. Diablo is going to give the Shizu Pierce, so that does work. And then we'll amplify that a little tiny bit by the Pierce power buff that we get from Christmas Shizu. And then Glenda is the alt swapper, giving synergy, activating the synergy resistance down from Hinata, and the alt buff here, the EX alt buff, the physical, the fire buff. So there's a reason why this team is going to be run. Alright, so turn 1, we're going to use Hinata's orb change because she's a special converter. It's just that she doesn't have gauge increase. She has that triple hit. So turn 2, you're looking for either like blues and oranges or blues and greens, but not a mixture of all three. So here I think we get to use the Diablo convert. Okay, well that's not great. Hold on. Okay, it was this hand, sorry. It was the next clip. So full hand of blues and greens, fine, because we brought Diablo. And that's why we brought Diablo. Otherwise, I'd probably still be here trying to get this run down if I didn't bring him. So there, full hand of blues. He can go away. He's not here for damage. Both him and Glenda are space, so they're type disadvantage. So, I mean, you can nuke with them because they are AoE characters, but I don't know how really recommended that is. Glenda would probably end up doing the most, because we would leave her up front with everyone else and she'll at least get the physical buff from Shizu. But here, orb change with Hinata plus the Shizu orb change, so we're just getting the gauge buff and the triple hit, which, you know, with a bunch of fire characters, it does add to the score. Not by a lot, but it does add to it. And then we have this, where now we have the Shizu ult, And now, even if we use Hinata's orb change, we'll still get the gauge increase from the alt swap on Glenda. So we don't need to use Diablo every single turn, which is why, he's here for ease of use. If you want to try and sweat a little bit more, you can just bring Octagram Lumi, alt buff, permanent alt buff, and the AoE damage is the most impactful thing. I didn't want to do that, but you can certainly do it if you want. And this hand, while looking, awful, we can get out of it. So alt swap, boom, and then we just bring Diablo in. Well, boom, after the stack, right? So Renard is increasing our weakness, strike, and alt resistance down, which means that, both Shizus will do more and more damage, and whoever has a third alt, if we do get a third alt, they'll do a little bit more because of the alt resistance down. And this hand again, it looks terrible, but we have 2 full Hand of Converters. And this was my problem with Primal Demon, is that you had Misery, who can convert 3 oranges, and you had Diablo, who can convert all greens. But you couldn't do a little mixture. Like, if you get 1 orange and 1 green, you had to use both skills, which is unfortunate. But with this team, we have Hinata, who can take care of the onesie-twosies, kind of weird hands. And you can choose what you want to use here. We're going to use Shizu because she's a bit cheaper. And we're on the turn 7 coming up. And we have the EX alt for Shizu. We are very close to an alt with Christmas Shizu, and we needed these 2 orbs for her. Otherwise, we weren't going to get it, and then it would have been a not super great run. But here, orb change with Hinata, bring Glenda in and alt swap. We are not going to get a third alt with anybody. Unfortunate, so we are leaving a little bit of damage on the table, even if they're type disadvantage. Anything helps. And then if it was Hinata, it'd be a single target type neutral, which I guess is cool. Again, she'll do more damage overall because she'll get the Commander buff and the alt buff and everything. I don't know if we would have gotten her EX alt, but we've now applied synergy rate, physical resistance down. We will bring in Diablo. I'm doing math right now because I don't know if we have enough points, which we do have enough points. So let's skip ahead. So we do bring Diablo in. We use his buff to activate the Pierce on everybody. And then Hinata comes in. Buff, 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 buff. So 120% alt damage, synergy resistance down, physical buff, 70% EX alt damage, fire attack, fire resistance down, AoE resistance down, and pierce power. A lot of buffs came from that. And Christmas Shizu does 415k, somewhere around there. Yeah, 415, 416. So not a lot, but it is what it is. And then Shizu does 5 million a hit, which is really good. 16.9 million damage is really, really good for a team for a stage that has physical resistance, like 80% of it. So she would have done a whole lot more. But 16.9 million is no longer good enough, since we're doing 111 million or something like that. And then the follow-up orbs, she does 144k right there. So this team actually scores higher than that half-meta team that I was using in the previous clip because it's full of lower-tier old characters and free-to-play, whereas this team still has quite a few EX characters on it, so the power level is much higher. So there is like the best alternate team I can give you, unless you have a bunch of other EX characters to put with Momiji, but it's not quite the whale team. This is fairly good, though. This is acceptable. Alright, the final alt team that I've got for you is a Visions of Coleus Lumi heavy team. So Lumi is stacking on Visions of Coleus units, which both Rimuru and Blanc are, but also stacking attack on Octagram Demon Lord, which Lumi is. So we've got a fire physical Lumi and a fire magic Lumi. So one of them is not going to do as much damage as the other, by all means, but we can get attack stacks on them, and with Prosper Lumi, she's converting all fire and earth orbs to blue. Well, yeah, we only have 2 fire units, but we have Coleus Rimuru, who not only has the rainbow orbs, which allows us to get the EX alts fairly quickly, but he can convert his own orbs. So my logic was that if we have a front line of almost always constantly Lumi, Lumi, and Rimuru, we can change both Lumi orbs, and then whatever's left over is Rimuru's orbs, who he can just convert his own. So that's how we're going to get around, having 6 blues. Blanc is here. Weakness Strike will help both Lumis. Synergy Resistance down will also help because we're getting Synergy Rate from Protector Lumi. And she's got the triple alt swap. And then we've got 2nd Anniversary Hinata, who is giving us the element buff. And if you don't have her, you could use Fire Shizu, and then you would have 3 fire characters already, and then you wouldn't have to worry about this. And she would still give the fire buff, so it's an option for you. Okay, so turn 1, we can't do anything, really, because Lumi costs too much. So we're just going to send these 4 blues, and then next turn we have 50 points. So as long as we get lucky, like this, where we only have Lumi orbs, we can convert it. That's going to be the heavy RNG for this run, is only getting Lumi orbs, either one of them, but only getting fire unit orbs on turn 2. So you could be resetting here for a little bit, and then we send it. If you decide not to bring 2nd Anniversary Hinata and you bring Fire Shizu, it's not nearly as RNG-ish because you'll have 3 characters who are fire, so all the orbs will get converted. So I guess, in reality, I probably should have brought her. She's just more expensive and she's also physical, but I guess she is another AoE fire character, so she would most definitely work, and probably work a little bit better, since we're not benefiting at all from Hinata's 2nd skill, which is the Future Hand of Oranges. We don't care about that. But we're going to Rainbow here, get it early, because it's going to give us quite a bit of alt gauge. I wanted to nuke with Coleus Rimuru, because he is AoE, he is getting the attack stacks. He won't really get anything else, but we're not going to get the element buff on him. It doesn't quite work out that way, though, so not a big worry and concern. But we also have the Enamor effect from Summer Lumi, which, alongside the 15% free alt gauge, just like Elmisia does for the other team, it also buffs our blue orb damage by like 70% or something. It's quite high, and we will take advantage of that. So we'll swap Reimer out for Blanc, alt swap away, and then orb change, and now we're doing more and more damage with the ladies. And that's pretty much the entire run. There's nothing else special about this. We almost have the EX alt for Summer Lumi, but it got deleted. So, cool. We can just get it back this turn because they only do it once. We're going to put another Enamor effect on Geld. So now Prosper Lumi can get 30% free alt gauge. Orb change here. And we'll bring Rimuru back in. This will get his alt. Just from this one Blanc orb, but also because of the double Enamor effect, we'll get another 30% on top of that, which is cool. And it's just going to help him get an alt, which helps out our damage. So here, like at this point, I don't really think we need to sit here for 4 more turns, but we're going to do it anyways. So there's that. We now have the EX alt for both Lumis, plus a decent amount of alt gauge for Rimuru. It's just that we need an alt swap, so he needs to go away. So he's going to come out. We do have an orb incoming for Summer Lumi, which means that we can still convert nicely, because if we brought Blanc in and she had an orb, we wouldn't be able to convert that. Or if her future orb was incoming, that would have been kind of bad. But here, alt swap, orb change, call it a day. 3 more turns to go, and we're not going to do nearly as much damage as you would think we would, sadly enough. But again, this is an alternate team. It's what you have to use in case you don't have an option. I don't expect actually a lot of people to have Prosper Lumi to begin with, but I couldn't think of anyone else that would be remotely usable, because Fire is such down in the dumps. Like, Fire Benimaru is an AoE magic character, but he gives nothing for the rest of the team. We're not running oranges. He's not an orb changer at all, so I didn't want to bring him. Fire Velzard is a physical AoE character. Like, you can use her if you really, really have to, but man, Fire is in a rough spot. So if you've made it this far in the video, I'm sorry that they're not better characters for you to use and better alts. It's just that Ogre's Pride does way too much fucking damage, and nothing else can really compare to it now. So this is the nuke turn. We'll bring Blanc in. We will use the weakness strike, but we don't have an orb for Blanc, which means that Rimuru coming in doesn't do anything. Unfortunate, we left damage on the table right there, but it is what it is. So we'll use the alt buff from Summer Lumi, which is now capped at 100%, plus the fire resistance down. We'll use the orb change for Prosper Lumi to get a full hand. And then we'll send this. Summer Lumi does 755k. It's not great. And then Prosper Lumi does 749k. How does that work out? Huh. How do they do the same amount of damage? Well, I'm confused. They have physical resistance. Well, sure. It is what it is. Alright, I'm not going to question it, just that it's weird. There we go. So there are alts that you can use for Boss Battle 1. You know, use what you got, do the best that you can. I can't team build for every single scenario. I'm sorry, otherwise I would still be making this video. But if you have other teams that you found have moderately worked that are not quite the same as what I've shown, please put it in the comments below so other people can see that and maybe take advantage of it. But that's it for me, guys. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.